what's up guys? My name is Zach and today I am driving a 1991 Porsche 944 S2. Up front is a 3.0 liter inline 4 and down below is a 5-speed manual transmission. Now I am super excited to be driving this here 944 for a couple of reasons. Well, first of all, I love Porsches. I've been on a little bit of a older Porsche kick recently, having driven a 993 and a 930 Carrera, but also the 944 has somewhat eluded me. I've had plans to review them, but they always fall through. So if you're seeing this video today, that means I finally got one to work. But before we get on to anything else, I have a website, zackbridle.com, where you can buy stickers and other merchandise when it becomes available. You could also submit your own vehicle to be reviewed by me through a quick and easy submission form, and you get a video of your car just like this one. And you could read my behind-the-scenes blog to see what I'm filming before it comes out on the channel. But let's get back to that 3-liter inline 4 under the hood. Well, there's a couple of things to note about it. First of all, it's a liquid-cooled inline 4. It's an inline 4, both of which Porsche was still kind of foreign to at this time. They were still producing air-cooled engines for the 911, and those vehicles were rear engine. This is front engine, so this was very, very different. Also, 3 liters of displacement for an inline 4 is massive. That is a very, very big inline 4, so much so that actually at the time, it was the highest displacement inline 4 on sale. Not ever, but on sale in 1991. Thought that was kind of interesting. It makes 208 horsepower, and honestly, it feels really, really good. Because it is 3 liters, you get that extra torque. If you would have told me that this was just kind of a little bit of a tired inline 6, I wouldn't even bat an eye. But it's not. It's a 4-cylinder, and I love that. There is an issue with these engines, however, and that is the fuel line are directly above the headers. So you're gonna wanna change those out if you end up getting a 944. Woo! Yeah! Let her eat, baby! It's very fun to drive. It's a little lazy, it's a little stocky, but it's a big 4-cylinder. You're asking a lot of it. It is dual overhead cam though, 16 valve, pretty neat. Like I said, paired to it, 5-speed manual transmission. It's not as clicky or as direct as I would have liked, but it is pretty on par with other Porsches of the era, and so I'm not really shocked by it at all. However, if you compare this to, say, the Nissan 300ZX or Mazda RX-7 of the same time period, those cars shift a lot better. So just something to think about. Last but not least, of course, the 944 S2 is rear-wheel drive. Now let's talk about S2. Why is S2 so important? Well, the S2 was only made for the final 3 model years of 89, 90, and 91. And basically what it did is it took everything good about the turbo 944 and gave it to this without the turbo engine. So this gets the wide body, it gets the smoother, updated front end, it gets a 1-year specific 1991 rear wing, better brakes, better transmission, things like that. So the S2 was the best you could do before the turbo, which was really, really nice. So with that stuff out of the way, let's talk about the interior. Well, in front of me, I have 4 gauges. These are very, very Porsche. On the left, I have my coolant temperature and fuel. Then I have my speedometer and tachometer in the center, and off to the right, I have my oil pressure and battery voltage. On the steering wheel, I have 2 little thumb horns, which is kind of fun, and I do have a giant pillowy airbag because this is the early 90s. Of course, it's giant and obtuse. Off to the left, I do have my headlights, fog lights, and dimmer switch, as well as 2 climate control vents. However, what you will not find over here is the ignition. Every single Porsche I've ever driven has had the ignition off to the left. It's one of the staples of the Porsche brand. However, it's actually off to the right in this car, like a normal car, and I don't like that. But moving out of the door, I do have 2 power window switches, handle to get in and out, things like that, pretty basic. And then moving into the center, I get 2 actually giant climate control vents. This really reminds me of the E36 BMW, just how massive these vents are. And then, maybe it's because of this, The climate controls themselves are tiny. I do get like defrost and recirculating and stuff, but very, very interesting. And also the temperature is in Celsius and not Fahrenheit, even though this was a USDM car. I also get a little clock and hazard switch off to the right. And then I do have an aftermarket radio because every radio from the 1990s was pretty much garbage. A little cubby, and then I have my rear wiper, power mirrors, and locking button, as well as a dead switch up above the shifter. Now the shifter itself actually looks really good, and the materials do feel nice. It is worn a little bit, but you have to remember this car has 212,000 miles on it, so you can't really hate on it too much. And overall, I think it does look classy. It looks very German, and I like that about it. Then I get a little ashtray, and what would be a center console, however the lid was removed, the lid comes off super easily. And so the owner, Michael, just leaves it off because, well, I would too. However, with that being said, there are no cup holders in the 944 S2, so unfortunately, it fails the big friggin' bottle test. Now we gotta talk about the seats. The seats hold you in really, really nice. They are very comfortable and they are very sporty. They have high bolsters. They're this nice, taut German leather, and I like the look of them as well as the feel. Now we do have back seats, however, I cannot fit back there. So this is what the back seats look like, but something interesting is that these are specific to the 1991 944, because after the 944 came the 968. And so these are actually the back seats for the 968. They just introduced them 1 year earlier for the end of the 944. Kind of an interesting quirk. However, we will hop around the back and do a cargo space review. So something interesting is that this is actually kind of motorized. So when you turn the key, there's actual motors that release it. This isn't very common for vehicles like this, but what is very common for the late 80s, early 90s is giant hatchbacks, which I absolutely love. You could put tons and tons of things back here, and they were actually very useful. The Supras like this, the RX-7s like this, the 300ZXs like this, and you could actually put usable things in the back. It has a nice glass hatch. However, be very careful if you do want to replace these struts. If you put too powerful of struts, you can actually damage the glass. So something to note there. But I love hatchbacks from this era, and the 944 is definitely one that I love. Now we got to talk about the looks. And like I said, I love the wide body of this car. I love the smooth front end. I love the big wheels. And how can you forget pop-up headlights? I mean, come on, they're so iconic to the 80s. I just love the way this car looks so well. And of course, it is finished in typical Porsche Guards red, which I like a lot. However, let's get on to my final thoughts. What do I think finally driving a Porsche 944? Something that has eluded me here on the Shooting Cars YouTube channel. Well, I want to talk about the history of the 944 just for a second. The 944 was developed in the late 70s for the early 80s, and it was actually originally meant to replace the Porsche 911. Actually, specifically the 930 that you're seeing here and that I recently reviewed on the channel. I'll leave that at the end. Porsche didn't really have much money in the late 70s and early 80s. It was the first time they had ever recorded a loss since their original conception. So they decided to cut the 911 and switch to this, a front mid-engine, rear-wheel drive, liquid-cooled 4-cylinder inline rather than flat. And so this would have been the successor to the 911. This would have replaced it. However, the 930 Carrera actually ended up being really popular, a last-ditch effort from Porsche, and so they kept the 911, and they still keep it to this day. But there's actually no modern counterpart for the 944. Yes, they went on to do the 968, which looked like it, and there's the 928 and the 924, and there was a bunch of variations of this same kind of concept. But in today's Porsche, here in 2022, we don't really see a modern counterpart of this car. And that to me is, well, kind of sad, because this car is actually really good. I think it fills a void that the 911s don't. This car is kind of a more comfy cruiser than hardcore adrenaline sports car like the 911. The 911 might step out on you and take you to the underworld. That's why they called the 930 turbos the Widowmaker. They were incredibly hard to handle, but they made you feel alive. Well, this car, if you haven't noticed by the inflection in my voice, I've been driving on the highway the whole time. It's just a big, comfy cruiser. makes good power. It's definitely fun to drive. I'm not saying it's not fun, but you have that longer nose, the hatchback, so you can go on holiday with all of your gear and not have to try to shove it into a frunk. That's what's lacking from Porsche's modern lineup. And that's what makes the 944 so special, so different, so unique compared to modern vehicles. And I like that. This is a Porsche that's very easily livable with. I don't know if I'm saying that right. There's a better way to say that. This car is very livable. It's easy to live with. That sounds better. And yet it still makes good power, still sounds good, and captures Porsche in its right moments. Now, this doesn't feel like a hardcore Porsche, but that's because it really isn't. The ignition is on the right, the engine's up front, and it's cooled by a different state of matter. But it still can assert itself. It's still unapologetically German. If you tear into the seats, you'll still find sauerkraut and schnitzel. And so this is almost like a fun bonus chapter on a book that I've already come to know and love. I love the Porsche brand. I don't think I hide that on the channel. Every Porsche I drive, I love. And that's including this one. But it's different. This is very different. And you know what? Different is good. Different can be very good. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Huge thank you to my friend Michael for letting me take out his 944 and finally letting me live out my dream of reviewing a 944. I can finally check this off my list. And hopefully, this isn't the last 944. If you have a 944 you'd like me to review, or 924, 968, or, well, any vehicle, let me know. But huge thank you to Michael for making this happen. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys.